On this episode of the Palm Beach Current, I'm joined by Renee Layman, CEO of the Center for Child Counseling, where we talk about the challenges facing young people and solutions on how to best help. Well, please be joined on our latest episode here with Renee Layman, the CEO for Center for Child Counseling here in Palm Beach County. Renee, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, glad to have you on the show. And I think this is a really important topic for anyone and everyone that could be listening. We're going to talk today about the work that you do there and go through a conversation focusing on counseling in the community with children, particularly on the mental health side of things. I'd hate to just immediately call it a crisis, but, everyone talks about the youth mental health crisis nowadays in our country. I don't know. Is it fair to call it a crisis? Is it fair to call it reality? From your perspective, what is contributing to that now?
Well, I mean, it is a crisis, and a big problem with what we're doing is we're still reacting to it as if it's a treatment problem when actually a public health problem. We wait for children to fall apart emotionally before we do anything, and the science of prevention shows that you can actually mitigate the impact of adverse childhood experiences and trauma. So one of the things that we've done at Center for Child Counseling is over the past decade shifted all of the work that we do to a public health approach. And that means not only the treatment that we provide, but the prevention, the early intervention before a crisis happens. To do that, we embed our services within schools, childcare centers, pediatric offices, other nonprofits to provide that mental health um, treatment, but also the prevention education for the people who work and live with kids to build their capacity to support their development and mental health.
So, for those that are listening, when we talk about crisis, what would be? I think social media is obviously an easy target at this point, but let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, what role is that playing? And if people are listening right now saying, okay, I know for myself, I have a 11-year-old son,
Mhm.
right? He is navigating into the most challenging part of this right now. Hey, how come I can't have a cell phone? Hey, how come I can't go on social media, right? And so these are norms I think that people are already at this age expecting to be part of. And then we use the word crisis, right? So if me as a parent, how am I supposed to, or what are some tips you have to navigate this?
Right. Well, when I was a child, we didn't have social media, right? I think it's just really amplified some of the concerns or challenges of growing up. You can imagine 24/7 being connected to those experiences, whether it's peer pressure, social comparison, bullying, body image struggles. And parents may not feel comfortable with knowing what the social media is and say, no, you can't be on it at all, or you can't have it at all, or be too permissive with it. And I have no control anyway. Kids are doing this anyway. So it's not really the screen time itself, right? It's what it's replacing. If your child is spending hours and hours isolating behind the screen, engaging in social media, that's a big concern. If it's taking the place of those face-to-face relationships, going outside to play, that creative expression. I remember we would, as a child, just go out and play all day, like just get lost playing with kids in the neighborhood. I don't know that kids are doing that anymore. Kids need play, they need that unstructured time. That's what really builds the resilience and emotional regulation.
Uh, Good point. And I think, going back to when I was a kid, which seems like a long time ago at this point, but, you're right. I mean, we would emulate all the different sports that were taking place during the year. If it was baseball season, we would go to a park and play baseball. If
Right.
it was hockey season, we would play street hockey. If it was basketball, we would do that. We would play hide and seek in the neighborhood and run through neighbors' yards. And some neighbors would, give you cookies and others would scream at you to get off their property. But all of these things would lead to developing in a way. These are things that you can't teach. And I notice it, not to keep bringing my kids in, but it's the best
No,
example I can give for our conversation. You know, when I get my kids in a situation like that, they have a great time. But
Mhm.
their default, because as a group, as kids, their default right now is to watch these certain shows that are on the iPad, or they'll sit and say, "Oh, this is what my friends and I want to do." And I think it must start at a different place, right? Like, on in fairness, I can remember my parents and that generation being very hands off. Like, don't come inside until the streetlights come on.
Right.
Ride your bike wherever, right? And we would not get in trouble, but certainly if I think about the things that I did as a kid compared to what my kids are doing now, it's totally different. So Renee, like where do we find that sweet spot? Where do we find the sweet spot where it's not, like you said, no social media or no, because kids, you tell them no, that's what they want to do. Where do we find that sweet spot?
And well, as a parent, you need to create that structure and looking at the age of your child and what's appropriate. The American Academy of Pediatrics, for example, they say no screen time below the age of 2 or 3, and following those recommendations and creating that structure, even when your child gets angry about it, that's your job as the parent. And it would be easy just to put your child and let them be behind that screen and stop the screening, but you have to be consistent with setting that boundary and structure for your child and making sure they're part of activities, whether it's going to camp or engaging in activities at church, or, you can create that structure for your child and set that expectation that they're out there. Are they a part of a baseball team? Are you going out and taking them to the beach, or on hikes and having that outdoor experience with your child? Are they engaging in art activities? So it's all about that environment and what you're creating for your child and your family.
Right. Now, in terms of how we see our children, right? I mean, from your experience in the work that you do, how can we as parents tell the difference between a child who's having a rough week and one who truly needs professional assistance?
Right. So that's a really great question, and it's really about whether the problems are persistent, pervasive, and impairing. So we all have our ups and downs, right? But if something's lasting weeks, not days, right? Your child may We all have a bad week. But if you see the anxiety, the sadness, behavioral changes, or withdrawal, they won't get out of bed, they're sleeping all of the time. If that's lasting for 2 or more weeks, you really need to pay attention to that and see what's going on. And then pervasive means it's showing up in multiple areas. If this problem's just at school, or if the problem's just at home, there may be certain circumstances that are leading to that. Maybe they don't like their teacher, right? They're really having a hard time in math. Something may be going on. But if you're seeing it's pervasive across settings, that they're struggling at home, at school, in the community, that's a signal that something deeper is going on. And then impairing means that it's getting into the way of their daily life. They don't wanna go to school, they can't go to school, the school refusal, or they can't sleep. They're just not enjoying things that they used to love. They're losing friendships, they just don't care anymore. They seem like a different child. That's really a big red flag that something's going on. And if you're seeing all 3, that is really time to reach out for help. Trust your instincts. You know your child as a parent. You know that when something is going on, when you feel that something's off, it probably is. You're not overreacting, and it's okay to reach out for help.
And what are some of the warning signs that we as parents often dismiss? Like you mentioned these red flags. What are some things that you see routinely in the work that you do where it isn't it is one of those, like, glaring flashing lights that you should be paying attention to?
Right. So one of the things that with children, it clinical concerns may not always present as they would with an adult. So, for example, anxiety, it could show up as anger, right? They may not be worried, they may be angry. So, you may see defiance, irritable behavior. Having meltdowns can actually be a sign of anxiety rather than just like behavioral issues with the child. So it's because their nervous system may be on alert and everything feels threatening. They're in that hyper arousal. Any little trigger may set them off, or they're just not regulated and they're just melting down. And then you can look at the physical symptoms like a lot of stomach aches and headaches, no medical cause, right? You don't know what's going on, but they always have a tummy ache before school, or the nurse is calling you. They're at the clinic again with a tummy ache or a headache. That's a red flag that you need to pay attention to, because that may be some type of mental health concern. Like I said before, refusing to go to school where they may have loved school before, and now they just don't want to go. It may not be laziness, it could be some type of anxiety, or fear. And then you look at perfectionism, the child who melts down over getting a B, right, instead of the A, or really excessive they need excessive reassurance from you. They keep asking, "Is everything okay?" over and over again. "Are you sure everything's okay?" That could really, show that they're anxious. And then once again, like, the not sleeping, not eating well, not getting out of bed, that can be a sign that, there may be some depression going on with your child.
Okay, understood. This will probably be a fun question for you to answer, but a lot of times we think, if I could create a whole process, this is how I would implement it. And I know we have a lot of listeners to this that are in the education community, whether they're administrators, teachers, all across Palm Beach County. But if you were sitting there and you had the ability to shape the policy for, let's say, all of the Palm Beach County schools for elementary, middle, and high school, what would that policy look like starting at pre-K? And I assume that's where you'd want to hit the most impact, to set that foundation.
Right, and it's not just the schools, it's the pediatric practices, it's every place that a child may interact with. And number 1 would be the universal screening, even before, like, starting in child development centers, starting in pediatric offices. When you go for that first child visit, we know that even a parent's trauma can, impact the child, and picking up on what may be going on within that family. And then when they get to school, that every teacher is trained to pick up on concerns early on with behaviors in the classroom, and that there's support, that there is, mental health support integrated into all of these systems that children are going to, not just the treatment part. So what we see a lot is that we wait for a child to fall apart emotionally before we do something as a system. So that prevention education, that early intervention when the behaviors first appear, or you screen at the pediatric office that something may be going on, that we have mental health support embedded within all of those systems to pick up on what may be going on. That universal screening for developmental and emotional concerns starting at birth.
Right. No, that's a really good point. And again, I think I see that in terms of if you could make the most impact in the beginning, then we see it in the medical field, right? Everyone's getting treated for things that it's too late, whether it's obesity or excessive alcoholism, then people are treated after the fact rather than prevention at the front end and teaching better habits and setting a foundation, right? I mean, I think there's
Right.
way too much around that.
We relate it to, like, waiting, right? So if we waited until somebody had stage 4 cancer before doing something, look at all of the screening and the prevention work that we do within our society. It's the same thing for mental health. The economic burden of child abuse and neglect alone is over $750 billion. Right? So investing in prevention isn't just the right thing to do, it's the smartest investment a community can make for our health and well-being.
Right. No, absolutely. We've talked about social media, we've talked about screen time, and we've talked about, setting the foundation and not waiting until it's too late. Talk to me a little bit about artificial intelligence because the AI side of things is becoming prevalent in all of our lives, not just our kids.
Right.
And it's been very interesting. I've I see it now with my kids. They know what Chat GPT is.
Mhm.
These kids are smart. I mean, they figure out all the latest and greatest. They know things before we even know. And
Absolutely.
it's clearly changing education, healthcare, every facet of our lives. I mean, it used to be go on Google, type what you needed, and you get put in the right direction. Now you go to Chat GPT, you go to Claude, you go to any of these things, and you become a pseudo expert
Right.
in minutes, right? So do
Yeah,
you see
and
it
not
becoming
only that.
part of do you
Yeah.
see that how do you see that becoming part of the mental health care for children?
Well, it's already there, right? So kids at home, "Hey Siri, can you play this?" Or "Hey Alexa," right? So for parents really to have that conversation about who Siri and Alexa are and that they're not an individual and in age appropriate ways. But we're already doing it within even here at Center for Child Counseling, we just launched our Hope Assistant, which is an AI agent focused on that prevention education. And it's to support parents that are going online. If we see a lot of parents coming on at our website 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning reaching out for help. So really giving reliable information. But with any of this, it's the most important thing in using these tools, especially for your kids, is making sure that it does not get in the way of that human interaction in that relationship. That is the key. And looking at whether you have a 6-year-old or a 17-year-old, your connection and the connection of the adults in that child's life and those relationships, that is so important. But you also learning about these tools, having open conversations about these tools, and having that conversation with your teen about, the impact of it, how they're using it, having the conversation. It's really, it's very important.
Do you feel the parents are the problem, Renee? I mean, I just ask
Mm.
very candidly because, listen, as kids, they follow the lead of their parents the majority of the time, right? And I think if you look at all of the work, especially on the social media side, everybody is on social media. And maybe it's getting a little bit better than worse. And maybe that's just my observation. But, I know for me, I use it to promote this show, I use it to promote a variety of things. But you go on there and you look at not many people are putting their worst day. They're not saying, "Man, I lost my job today and I'm really sick." And, they're putting these beautiful vacations and my kid got straight A's. And, you know, so I feel one thing that isn't talked about in this space is the parents, right? We're quick to say the kids are being different, the kids, but like, I think it starts with the parents. And maybe that's just my opinion, but what's your take on that? I mean, some people are going to listen to this and get offended because they enjoy that part of social media. But I think if we look at it objectively,
Mhm.
what would your advice be to parents in that space to be better role models?
Well, you are the model for your child, and whether you like it for better or worse, your children are going to look at you as their role model. You're the most important relationship to them. So, how do you want them to act? Do you want them to be on social media all of the time? Do you want them to be um, using the families or the people that they see on social media as the role models, or do you want to be that person for them? And creating those experiences for your child that gets them out of that, right? So I don't know if I would call the parents the problem, but when you know better, you do better, and these experiences really even impact the young child's brain and the way that it develops, and the decisions that they're making. And it's a huge issue that we're confronting. I really feel like our families are more disconnected than they've ever been because they are behind these screens. How do we create these experiences? And sometimes it is harder work for you as a family. You're stressed, you're busy, you're at work, the just everything going on in our world right now that can seem very heavy, and just being able to disconnect for a while, but also looking at your schedule and how you're being mindful and making the time to have, whether it's just going outside to a park or going to the beach or having, going for a bike ride. Those are very, very important relationship building experiences.
What are some best practices that you feel parents could try? Because I think everybody has the best
Mm.
intentions, or you hope that they have the best intentions. And nobody is perfect, right? I mean, none of us can sit and say, all right, today we're going to all wake up together and we're going to go on a family bike ride at 6 a.m., right? Like the world unfortunately doesn't work
No,
that
it's
way.
not
There's so
good.
many variables.
Yeah.
But what is, I guess, one thing that people listening, parents listening could do and say, okay, today I'm going to do this, because a lot of times it seems it's just one step, right? One thing that you introduce, and that one thing becomes a habit. They write books about this. And then all of a sudden that habit sticks, right? What would be your one thing that you see in the work you do that works well?
I would say 15 to 20 minutes of just undivided attention and time where you follow your child's lead. Our founder, Jane Robinson, always says, sit on your hands and bite your tongue as a parent and just follow the child's lead. Let them do anything that they want to do within, the play, the art, that safety of that relationship, that undivided time with your child, just it's magical. It just creates this, you will learn so much about them, and, a lot of kids don't get that opportunity to have that time with their parents, and that's so important. It just takes 15 minutes a day, or even if you do that 3 times a week, just spend that time with your child. If it's a young child, you can see what they're playing through, and they will tell you so much through their play. Even a teen, as defiant as they may seem, they do want that connection with you. They can seem prickly at times, but if you set that up, they do want that relationship with their parent. You just have to really, foster that environment for them.
I love that. And I think that makes the most sense. And there's so many different ways you could go with that, right? Because it shouldn't have to be a structured thing. We shouldn't have to
Right.
set a schedule to do different things. Because it seems if you do that and it goes well, the kids are going to say, hey, could we do more of that? Right. And then that
Yeah,
more of that leads to other things that you start to
right.
do, depending on what your interests are.
And we give that as homework to parents, right? Because think of your lives get busy. There's a lot going on, but just remembering to take that time and have the child really be the center of your universe for 15 to 20 minutes can change everything.
We talk so much about in any facet, right? The negative sides. The news is littered with all kinds of horrible stories about war and politics and all these things. But what is one thing that gives you hope in the work that you're doing, right? Like it's quick. We started the show talking about crisis,
Right.
but what gives you hope in terms of these kids you're working with?
So really, it's the kids themselves and the families. And I'm a therapist that I've been in this field for almost 30 years now, and my work started in residential treatment. And really, my career went down to then, oh, we need to work with babies. We need to get ahead of this issue. And that you don't have to wait for that crisis, and that the prevention, the early intervention, that gives me a lot of hope now, the work that we're doing to mitigate the impact of adversity and trauma, and to see the healing that happens within relationships. Yes, we provide the treatment, but the hope is that, we don't have to wait for kids or families to go through these things. We can provide so much support before. Most of my career has been working with a lot of trauma, a lot of adversity, and that can get very, very heavy. But being able to support parents and adults that work with kids and building their capacity to promote child safety and well-being and resilience, and seeing them use those tools, whether it's in the classroom or in the home, it's really a lot of hope. And one of the things that we've adopted as an organization is the HOPE framework, healthy outcomes from positive experiences. It really, when you talk about a big shift, and that's out of Tufts Medical Center, and it's a evidence-based framework now for promoting positive relationships, which can actually mitigate the impact of adverse childhood experiences. For so many years, we talked about the bad things that happen and how they impact you. Well, positive things are even more powerful and that we can do something, whether you're 2 or 92, these positive experiences and buffering relationships can change your way of being and seeing the world, and you can and healing is possible. So lots of hope with all of that.
Well, no, it's always good to hear about different sides of hope and the positive sides of stories. And the work you're doing is incredible. Renee, on this part of the show, I tend to ask people similar questions, usually one or two. I have the same. But before I do that, I think it's important from what you do. What is the book you would recommend? Is there a book out there that you think is really good that parents could read?
Yes, so, Tina Payne Bryson with, Dan Siegel wrote a book called The Whole Brain Child, and, it is really just a really comprehensive approach. It's very practical, but it for anybody that has a child, The Whole Brain Child, it's just accessible, it's grounded in neuroscience, it's very practical, and if you want strategies to implement in your family or with your child, that's one. Or anything by Dan Siegel or Dr. Tina Payne Bryson, by the way. We brought her down recently and we had an event at the Breakers, and just listening to her talk about her way of being with children, her own children too. So she shared those experiences and her mistakes. And but it was it's we have it available at bekidsafe.org, which is our online learning management system. But it's listening to her is just phenomenal, and the strategies. So very practical things that you can actually do. You know, you read a lot of books and it's like, what? Like, that's not realistic. These are very, very realistic things that you can immediately implement.
Excellent. What is your favorite local restaurant to go to? This
Oh,
is something where we just try to plug the whole area. So your favorite local restaurant.
yeah. Well, I love Spoda's. Been going to there probably over 20 years, and grew up in the Bahamas, and I love seafood, and it's always good consistently.
Excellent. I don't think they've been mentioned on the show, so they'll
Yeah,
appreciate it. That's great. And
yeah.
then any type of service provider, local business person that you think doesn't get enough recognition in the area.
Well, Kathy Leone, whose husband is Paul Leone, and he's the CEO at the Breakers, but she has just been for years and years and years such an advocate in our community and has helped countless children, especially within the child welfare system and the work that we're doing. And she's just personally been so supportive of me and the work that we're doing that, I don't feel like she gets enough recognition for being that lead. She's a quiet leader, she doesn't look for recognition, but she's definitely changing lives within our community.
Those are the best types of leaders, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And lastly, talk to us about how your organization, how people can get involved, and how they can get in touch with you.
So you can go to centerforchildcounseling.org, and whether you are interested in services or volunteering or just learning about our work or taking a workshop or a training, reaching out to us at info@centerforchildcounseling.org. We have a lot of resources on our website for parents, and we have ways to talk to children. So if you're a parent or a caregiver and your child has gone through something really tough like grief and loss and war. We have different topics that our education team has developed. So you can go on our website and get those resources. Like I said, we have the Hope Assistant where you can just ask general questions about mental health, or my 2-year-old is melting down and having tantrums. What do I do? You will get really practical, research based advice on how to. Implement things in your home, or if you work at a school or pediatric practice. And also, we have a quiz online. If you go to the front page of our website, you can just go through and see what services from prevention to early intervention and treatment may be helpful for you or your family. So we try to make it a robust website with lots of information and support and resources.
Yeah, and maybe we could actually post that quiz when we promote this online and in different places. That could be a good introductory way to get to know you. But Renee, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on the Palm Beach Current. Please reach out and look at the services that she offers. And you're welcome anytime. Thank you so much for joining
Thanks for
us.
having me. Thank you.